Now, the former Nationals leader and former Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce has lashed out at the coalition arrangements. He wrote a piece for the Australian newspaper today arguing that the Nationals are getting a raw deal in their coalition arrangement with the Liberals, arguing they deserve another cabinet position and more senior portfolios. There is no marriage of equals, Barnaby Joyce wrote. As time progresses, one party is completely dominated by the other, existing in the shackles of the expectation for harmony. He went on to note that in Parliament, the Deputy Prime Minister doesn't even sit next to the Prime Minister anymore. Instead, it's the Deputy Liberal leader, the Treasurer Josh Frydenberg, who sits in that prized place. Joyce has deliberately kicked up a stink about this now, warning it needs to be fixed in order to win the next election. I caught up with him from his electorate earlier today. Barnaby Joyce, you seem to be saying that the coalition marriage is fractured and that the Nationals are the jilted partner.
No, we need a fair deal, Chris, in the marriage. Obviously, let's start with where the Deputy Prime Minister sits. The Deputy Prime Minister should sit to the right of the Prime Minister, not down the bench where he seems to be at the moment. If you're going to be in the marriage, you better be in the marriage house. And then we've got to make sure that committees are divided up properly. We've got to make sure that portfolios that the National Party get are substantial portfolios. The vast majority of the money is administered by the Liberal Party. In fact, as you know well, Chris, that there's really only 13 major silos, 13 major portfolios, and the National Party don't exclusively own one. Even in transport, which is supposed to be the big one, urban infrastructure, communication and the arts, within that silo are all held by the Liberal Party. So it's not an exclusively National Party policy. We need to do this because recent polling has shown that the National Party brand name is fading, and that would make sense because the substantial portfolios are held by another party. Now, the Liberal Party are not going to govern without the National Party. Simple as that. Once in a blue moon, Howard did it once. But you're not going to have National Party votes if you don't have National Party seats. You won't have National Party seats unless we get a substantive change in how this relationship works.
So how much of this is the Liberal Party taking advantage of the coalition, taking the Nationals for granted, and how much of it is the Nationals leadership not asserting itself?
Well, look, I've been talking about this for a while, so has a lot of my colleagues. We've been doing it the polite way, Chris. We've been doing it quietly behind closed doors and doing all the things they tell us to do and don't let it go public, but it's just not working. So this is the other alternative, and we've got to do it now because by the time the election comes, I'll forgotten my conversation with you, but if it's not fixed, the reality will certainly be there and people will be capitalising on it. In those polls in the Lower Hunter in Newcastle, the Nats polled less than 2%, less than 2%. And One Nation was over 30%. So it's not that I don't have reason to say this. There is a problem. The problem needs fixing. It is in how the relationship works. And for there to be a coalition, it has to be in form. It has to be in substance. And like it was in the past, and we've got to make sure that we get back to that. Substantial portfolios held by the National Party, silos held by the National Party exclusively, the proper priority, dispensing of committee chairs and statutory committees also to be held by the National Party. Likewise, following that becomes budgets and everything that goes with it.
Are you saying there should be one more cabinet position for the Nationals, apart from getting some more important portfolios, another cabinet position?
Well, let's take it for instance. They say, oh, the numbers. Well, it's ridiculous to think that the Prime Minister's number is equivalent to the Minister for Water in Northern Australia. It's not. You know very well the Prime Minister's number's worth 5, 6, 10. In fact, sometimes it's just the Prime Minister's vote is all that matters. And the Treasurer, not far behind that. I mean, that is the reality. So to say they're only worth one is ridiculous. If they want to act like they're only worth one, if they want to be treated like they're only worth one, sure, knock yourself out, but they won't want that. So we've got to make sure that, I think that'd be absolutely plausible. You say, look, we've got stronger portfolios. They've got Prime Minister, Treasurer, Finance, Defence, Health, Education. These are the biggies, Social Security. And, you know, why doesn't the Nationals have finance? In the past, they had Treasury. Well, ask for it. We want Treasury. And if you say you can't have Treasury because it's too important, say, well, then that portfolio is worth 3 or 4 or 5. And we're going to work on the premise that you now have 5 cabinet ministers, not 1, because you want that one so badly that it's got to be worth more than one.
Were the Nationals treated better when you were leader and Deputy Prime Minister? And does that mean what you're saying is that Michael McCormack just is not leading the Nationals strongly enough?
I'm not touting for leadership, don't want it, but what I am is the longest-serving minister of the National Party and a former leader. I get that. Therefore, I think I have a role to say that things that others can't. Michael goes into a meeting, I don't know what it is, 8 o'clock, 8:30 every day with the Prime Minister, and he doesn't want the aggro, he doesn't want, he wants the hail fellow well met, and he doesn't want the aggro in Cabinet, and so other people will say the bleeding obvious, and I think I have a position to do that, being father of the National Party, longest-serving member, and a former leader, and I'm going to say what we've been saying privately, because we want this dealt with.
Is he safe as Nationals leader?
Well, he's safe from me because I've got no look. I've had my crack at it. I've said I'm not standing again. That's it. But I want this fixed. And mate, you can't hurt me. There's nowhere for me to fall. But I'm going to make sure I still stand up for my party. And I know a few of my colleagues will get poos and you should be quiet. And sorry, it doesn't work like that. You've got to have a philosophy. You've got to have a capacity to stand behind your party. You've got to make sure you fight for what you're entitled to, because if you don't do it, if you're not seen for it, then other people in their own electorates will say, well, mate, if you can't fight for yourself, how are you going to fight for me?
Well, just on that, I mean, obviously the only way for a junior coalition partner to really assert itself is through its leadership. So what you're saying is an implicit criticism of Michael McCormack's leadership. But also on climate policy, there are suggestions that Scott Morrison might want to sign up to net zero emissions by 2050. Is this something that the Nationals could accept?
Yeah, no, well, we don't want to sign up to net zero emissions because the way they do it, look, out here, they got their net zero emissions, is they said, well, those trees, you can see them behind you, they're not mine anymore. They're Paris's. Someone else owns them. That's how you made your Kyoto Protocol. You stole an asset off the farmers without payment. And when we talk about net zero emissions, we know where you're going to be heading, back here. So, no, unless you want to say that you're going to close down the Sydney Harbour Bridge or maybe shut down the Cedar Wurrunga and save carbon emissions that way, which, of course, is patently absurd, and that's why I'm saying it. We want to see what the effects of these are, not all these things that you sign yourselves up to and gives you a jolly good feeling and, oh, hooray, aren't we just the toast of the belle of the ball in Amsterdam? No, because we pay for it here.
Barnaby, thanks for joining us. It's going to be an interesting year.